Alright, welcome back folks. Now we're going to go ahead and turn our attention to our second document in the Enlightenment DBQ. The question, of course, is posed to us, Enlightenment philosophers, what was their main idea? So reminder, we want to practice good document analysis steps. Make sure that question is written at the top. Please also take a moment with your pencil to go ahead and put an arrow next to document B. Underline the source and go ahead and circle the year, which is 1776. So if you see in this particular document, this is a document that was written by Voltaire. We did introduce Voltaire last week with our Enlightenment interviews and also in the flipped video lecture. Voltaire is a philosopher that's definitely going to promote the concept of freedom, and we'll focus more so when we get to the text. And circle the year 1726. So this is a primary source. This is moving past what we're reading in the textbook. This is actually taken from the 18th century, which is very valuable to us as a historian. And then finally, the little note at the top, put a little star next to it, because that indicates, of course, that you want to read that note. So we know that Voltaire, he adopted this pen name because he became a very outspoken writer. He writes a ton of different types of venues or types of writing, so poems, novels, essays, plays, and I believe upwards, it says, of 20,000 personal letters. He is really focused on the concept of tolerance. When you see tolerance at the top, go ahead and circle it. I want you to connect the dots that tolerance, we're talking about acceptance. We're talking about respect. So let's go ahead and dive into document B, which is actually a portion of Voltaire's, which is Letters Concerning the English Nation. So let's read it one time through, and as you listen to me read, go ahead and practice good skills of just circling the words you don't know, because when we go back through the text, that's what we can add and annotate that vocabulary. Take view of the Royal Exchange Trading Center in London, where all representatives of all nations meet for the benefit of mankind. There the Jew, the Muslim, and the Christian transact together, as though they all profess the same religion. There the Presbyterian confides in the Anabaptist. The Churchman depends on the Quaker's word. If one religion were allowed in England, the government would very possibly become arbitrary. But if there were two, the people would cut another's throats. But since there is a multitude, they all live happy and in peace. Alright, so let's go ahead and start breaking down what Voltaire is getting at with this particular section. So it says, take view of the Royal Exchange. So remember, we already know that this is by the source, that this has to do with England. So the Royal Exchange, in parentheses, is a trading center. It's kind of a marketplace. It's in London. We're all representatives. So when you see the word representatives, I would circle that in a little annotation or maybe a little stick figure. We're talking people. So all people from all nations meet for the benefit of mankind. Okay, so to benefit means to help. So they're there to help, they're there to trade and do business. Now, next Voltaire goes into, again, the different types of religion, the different types of people that are meeting at the exchange. He says Jew, Muslim, Christian. So I would circle all those. Those are examples of religions. So in that case, we're talking about monotheistic, meaning they believe in one God, but they all transact. Transact means they kind of interact, they exchange. If we're buying and selling, that's called a transaction. As though they professed. If you profess something, you talk about it, you believe it, you claim it. So they claim or they actually practice the same religion. There the Presbyterian confides in the Anabaptist, and the Churchman depends on the Quaker's word. Okay, so Voltaire here is giving examples of if you're confiding in someone, you're talking, you're putting your trust into them. If you're depending on someone, you have a relationship. So he's kind of making the connection here that these different religions, these different types of Christians, are all trusting, they're all sharing, they're all depending, they're all interacting at this Royal Exchange. Now, so far he's talking about the positives and all the good things of all these religions coming together to interact. Now the second piece he's talking about, if there was only one religion allowed in England, the government would possibly become arbitrary. Go ahead and circle the word arbitrary. And arbitrary is going to connect back to meaning that power is unlimited or power is unrestrained. So you could even maybe annotate or connect to, we have the possibility of having a tyrant. So if necessarily they're just the government telling you could only be one religion, you could only be a Christian, you could only be a Jew, that could result in a tyranny, someone that's abusing or using excessive power. But then Voltaire goes on to say, if there were two, the people would cut one another's throats. So if you only have two religions, you get in the situation where you're going to put yourself in competition. So maybe the two religions would fight for each other, against each other, or maybe they would try to compete in terms of who has more power or influence, or more people that practice their religion. So if you have two, you kind of create that, rival or that competition. But then he says, but there is such, or there's a multitude, there's multiple religions, they all live happy and in peace. So if we have many religions, it doesn't really matter because everybody just kind of does their own thing. They believe as they choose, they practice as they want to. So you have the freedom not for a government to tell you what religion to practice, and you have the freedom not to be scared that you're going to get into a competition. But Voltaire is basically showcasing that in England, that freedom of religion is very powerful and very important to society and government. All right, now that we're trying to break down the text of Voltaire's document, let's go ahead and take a look at the guiding questions at the bottom. So number 1, what happens at the Royal Exchange in London? In the text, it talks about people from all over the world who practice different religions come to this exchange to buy things, transact for one another. They talk about other things, they share knowledge, they share ideas. Number 2, why, according to Voltaire, is it good that England allows a multitude of religions? And this goes back to that last piece. So when there's just one accepted religion, the government could be tyrannical, could be tyrant. When there's two, the country could necessarily separate, us against them kind of mentality. But when there's multitude, there's many religions, people tend to relax and just kind of do what they want and do their own thing. Number 3, really the heart of the document and our focus question. What was Voltaire's main idea about religion and society? Definitely, exclamation point here, Voltaire believes that governments should promote tolerance and acceptance of different religions. Now, Voltaire is a man that promotes tolerance and acceptance of multiple things. For example, Voltaire is also the man who's going to promote freedom of speech. So the quote we mentioned before in class and in the video lecture, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to my death your right to say it. So Voltaire is saying you have the right to speak your mind and have an opinion. Same type of thinking, but applied to, again, you have the right to believe and worship as you see fit. And then number 4 is asking you to connect the dots here. What does Voltaire's main idea about religion have in common? What are the similarities with John Locke's main idea about government? So we could basically say, like Locke, Voltaire places great importance on individual freedom. Okay, a person's right to freedom. In Locke's case, Locke believes that individuals have the freedom and the capability of creating a good government. Voltaire believes that allowing individuals to choose their own religion and avoid conflict, that's the way they're going to practice that freedom. So Locke in matters of government, Voltaire in matters of religion, but both in that case they're promoting the ideas of freedom. All right, I think that wraps up our second video lecture in Document B. So we'll go ahead and pause it there. Make sure you've annotated, you completed the document analysis portion at the top, and address those guiding questions, and then we'll go ahead and move on to Document C.